Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Friday, July 24th, and this is virtual lunch number 95. Dan Rodriguez, thank you so much for joining us today.
Spoiler alert, I've spent my entire career basically in the legal academy, more or less. And I've spent the last several years at Northwestern, Pritzker School of Law in Chicago. But I've spent, again, happy years at Northwestern until the summer of 2018. I was the dean of the law school and came to Northwestern as the dean. And before that, I was on the faculty of the University of Texas for a number of years. And that was our first serious professional foray out of California. So before I was at Texas, I was at the University of San Diego, where I also served as the dean for a number of years. And I began my career at UC Berkeley in the Bay Area. The two parts of our large legal ecosystem that, in my opinion, have changed the most slowly are legal education and legal services regulation across the country. Having said that, law school is happily a much more diverse place, again, not enough, than when I began my academic career, by race, by gender, by class. The faculty, somewhat more diverse. Certainly, experiential education has become, over the last 25, 30 years, more important. Again, not enough. You can see a theme here. We're more multidisciplinary in terms of reaching out to other professions. Technology is certainly, as it's impacted all of your careers wherever you are, it certainly has impacted law schools in an important way. And I've come to be an evangelist for the intersection between law, business, and technology as a key focal point for legal education. And there hasn't been much of a motivation from the professoriate, which after all still runs the scheme, to change in important ways. They are self-satisfied. Probably one of the most luxurious careers to have in this day and age is a tenured faculty member. Their commitment to doing things the way that they had it done when they were in school is deeply embedded and hardwired. I'll also say this: we're away from the profession. We come into the legal academy without a lot of practice experience. We sort of pride ourselves of, I came almost right from the womb into being a law teacher, which when I look back on it is just ridiculous. Because I talk to some of my colleagues who teach, say, civil procedure and say, oh, do you teach something about e-discovery in your profession? And I might as well have said, do you teach them about Mars and Venus? They've never heard of it, much less think about incorporating into their classes. The external, I'll say just briefly, is the lack of strong pressure to change. I was dean, I was speaking to a bunch of our alums, and they said, when is Northwestern going to modernize its curriculum? When are legal education going to start teaching more practice skills and all of that? So I just said to them, when you guys start hiring on that basis, as long as you open up the same magazine, U.S. News and World Report, as the students do, and go down the list and say, we're going to interview at these schools. I mean, Yale could teach underwater basket weaving, and folks would still line up around the block to hire their graduates. So in the absence of market pressures, external influences, either regulatory or market pressures, schools have no incentive to change in any significant ways. And indeed, when they do change and innovate, the market does not reward them. There's been a lot of adaptation and scrambling, some hard work that's been put into learning and how we're going to engage in learning, particularly in a primarily remote environment. Some schools have promised some hybrid models, and I haven't been shy in suggesting that's a fool's errand presently. I think that we need to do our best to be out there and saying that we need to give our students as best education as we can, as best engagement as we can in a mostly remote setting. I think that law schools and universities, because a lot of these decisions, let's be clear, are driven by the universities, but let's assume that the law schools have discretion and control. I think there's a very good case to be made, and the students are making that case, for adapting what we're charging students. So some of the tuition that students pay at whatever law school is for the face-to-face interaction, events, on-campus interviewing, and all of that. I mean, I think it's an excuse, frankly, for a dean to say, oh, we can't decouple that. It's all in one big bucket. Well, it's not all in one big bucket. I think there can be and ought to be some appreciation for the fact that students are not getting the full experience, no matter how diligent you are. I think that there has to be collective sacrifice across the law schools, and that might actually enable us to make the tuition adjustments for students. There are some law schools that are in different places in the pecking order that I am more than sympathetic to, understand that the challenge they face is existential. Are students going to come if they don't have it in residence? If the spring is as bad as the fall, which it very well may be, will they defer? LLM students, who are foreign students, who are a source of big revenue for a lot of schools, aren't coming to the United States. So some of these schools are in real jeopardy. And so the tuition issue for those schools, but those schools are at the verge of succeeding or failing. Here's what the students and graduates want. They want to be told the truth. If the truth is we're really uncertain about what the next month or 6 months are going to look like, that's the truth. And the students are smart enough, the graduates are smart enough, the alums are smart enough to want that truth. And so the evasiveness, I think, is really, really disserving our profession. And when bars announced that they were going to go ahead, full speed ahead with in-person, the students revolted, the graduates, rightly so. Many, not all, law deans said, yes, of course, that's ridiculous. The epidemiology does not support that. We run the risk of putting our graduates in harm's way and also losing a generation of graduates. And so some states started to adapt in certain ways, say eventually you have to take a bar exam, but for now we're going to have supervised practice. Some states moved toward an online exam in a kind of Rube Goldberg contraption way. So Texas basically says, we're going to postpone the July bar exam, we're going to have it in September, but we're also going to give you an October online option. And by the way, the October online option is not going to include any Texas-specific questions, and we'll also give you a February. By the time you figure out what they're doing, it's really a mess. A few states have awarded what's called a diploma privilege. What states are ambling toward adopting an online exam, there's still a critical mass of states that are going ahead in a few days with an in-person bar exam. This is just a great tragedy. Just imagine the predicament of this class of 2012 facing what they're facing. Ironic. The schools that have made some more innovative and bold adaptations to the world that you're describing are schools that are traditionally down the food chain, the pecking order of schools. They're the ones whose students are not going to AmLaw 100 firms. Suffolk Law School, which is a law school in Boston. Now, it's not Harvard, it's not Boston University, but they have developed an enormous, really interesting, rich innovations in law and technology and in legal operations and others. And the proof will be in the pudding. I think what we'll see in the coming years for schools like Suffolk and others I could mention, by adapting to the new business model and new world and the Moneyball strategy, they will be punching above their weight class and really succeeding and getting the attention of other law schools that say, what does Suffolk know that we don't know? Well, apparently the answer is a heck of a lot. For law students at any law school to have a facility with technology, I mean, actually have some understanding of how to utilize big data, know enough about legal analytics and where it comes from, but to learn enough machine learning and others to be able to adapt. Is you urge folks who are teaching the core curriculum that this is a really important part of their first year course. So contracts, stop spending all your time teaching these cases from the 1890s. There's so much other stuff going on in the profession that relates to technology and all of this. Put it in the core of the curriculum. Because if we basically have a law curriculum that basically says we have the sacrosanct core, and then we have these boutique little things on the side. You could take a law and AI class with you and 7 of your classmates or whatever and dig into these issues, or you could take a privacy class. Teach privacy and torts. It's about torts. It's also about contracts. It's also about a bunch of other areas, of course. It's only when you get into the inner sanctum of the core of the law school curriculum and the inner sanctum of your tenure line faculty, those with institutional power, that you're going to make any meaningful change in what you're teaching and what you're contributing. And I've urged them to really think about testing within law school for folks who are looking to go into alternative parts of the profession, like maybe legal operations and others, and also looking at the bar exam. Why can't we have a not racially discriminatory, competency-based, synthetic way of evaluating competency rather than what we have now, which is 2 things. One is take and pass a bar and pray that you're not going to be brought up on disciplinary charges. Right? That's not much of a scheme of regulating competence. If we did that with doctors, we would never go into hospitals. So I would not give any student a false hope entering law school that they will have a meaningful residential experience in the coming year. Why are you telling them that? Then it's a recipe for them dropping out. But if that's what they need to do for themselves in terms of health, in terms of economics, then we should tell the truth. It's not going to be the same as in-person education, but you can accomplish a number of important aims. And here's the secret sauce. It's the professor's engagement, his or her willingness to actually have one-on-one Zoom meetings with students, their willingness to do very technology, social suggestions. There's a lot of different techniques. And if we show that we can adapt to where the students are, that counts for a lot. The ones that I would put at the top of the list of where we're missing, the students are missing, one is communication skills in a broad sense. Students leave with remarkably thin set of the kinds of communication skills that those in the profession say are absolutely vital and essential. Entrepreneurial mindset in professional education and even undergraduate education, there's a lot of attention that's being paid to how to develop an entrepreneurial mindset, and lawyers are particularly bad at that. Cultural competence in an increasingly diverse cultural world.
Dan Rodriguez, everybody. Wonderful.